Sometimes life delivers information at the exact moment a person thinks they no longer need it. Not because they were searching for answers, not because they were expecting a reminder, but because certain connections have a way of returning when they are least prepared for them. That is exactly what happened to your soulmate. Recently, they received a message about you completely out of the blue. It wasn't something they had planned for. It wasn't something they were looking for. In fact, when they first saw it, they assumed it would have little effect on them. Just a simple piece of information. Just another passing moment in an ordinary day. But the instant they read those words, something unexpected happened inside them. Listen carefully, because your heart needs this right now. The reaction they experienced was nothing like what they imagined it would be. They thought they would feel neutral. They thought they would move on within seconds and continue with their day. Yet instead of indifference, they felt their attention completely captured. The message lingered in their mind long after they put it down. Something about hearing your name, hearing news about you, or simply being reminded of your existence awakened emotions they believed were no longer there. What surprised them most was not the message itself. It was the feeling that followed. A feeling they could not immediately explain. Questions began appearing in their mind. Memories quietly surfaced. Thoughts they had not revisited in a long time suddenly felt important again. And as the hours passed, they realized the message had triggered something far deeper than simple curiosity. It had awakened a part of their heart they thought had already settled. And the more they reflected on that unexpected reaction, the more they realized this was only the beginning of a much larger realization. And listen to this, because the most surprising part of the message was not what it said. It was what it revealed. Long after reading it, your soulmate found themselves thinking about their reaction more than the actual information they received. At first, they tried to brush it aside. They told themselves they were over-analyzing things. They assumed the emotional response would disappear as quickly as it arrived. But something unusual happened. Instead of fading, the feeling stayed. It followed them throughout the day. It appeared during quiet moments. It returned when their minds should have been focused on completely different things. And the more they tried to ignore it, the more they found themselves asking a question they never expected to ask. Why did this affect me so much? Your heart needs this right now, because there are moments when people discover something unexpected about themselves. Your soulmate believed they understood where they stood emotionally. They believed they had already processed everything they needed to process. They believed certain chapters had been organized neatly in their mind. Yet this message challenged that belief. It exposed something they had not been paying attention to. Not a memory, not a specific feeling, but an emotional connection that was still active beneath the surface. What makes this experience so significant is that they were not prepared for it. If they had been sitting around thinking about you every day, the reaction would have made sense. If they had been waiting for news about you, it would have been easier to explain. But that was not the case. The message arrived unexpectedly, and because of that, it bypassed all the explanations they normally rely on. There was no time to prepare, no time to create emotional distance. Their reaction emerged naturally and honestly before their mind had a chance to filter it. As the hours passed, they started replaying the moment they first received the message. They remembered the instant they saw it. They remembered the feeling that followed. Most importantly, they remembered how quickly their attention shifted. Out of all the things happening around them, this became the one thing they could not stop thinking about. That realization unsettled them because it forced them to confront a possibility they had been avoiding. Perhaps the connection still carried more meaning than they wanted to admit. The deeper they reflected, the more they noticed something else. The message had not simply captured their attention. It had changed their emotional state. Before receiving it, their day felt ordinary. After receiving it, something felt different. A door had opened inside their thoughts. Questions began appearing where certainty once existed. Curiosity began replacing assumptions. And with every passing hour, they became less focused on the message itself and more focused on what their reaction was trying to tell them. And listen carefully, because that is where the real story begins. The message may have been the trigger, but it was their unexpected reaction that carried the deeper meaning. Because for the first time in a very long while, your soulmate stopped assuming they had all the answers. Instead, they began paying attention to the emotions they had overlooked. And as they listened more closely, one particular memory began quietly moving to the front of their mind, demanding to be seen in a completely different way than ever before. And listen to this, because the memory that returned was not the one your soulmate expected. Out of all the moments they could have revisited, it was a seemingly ordinary interaction that kept appearing in their mind. Not a dramatic event, not a major turning point. Just a simple moment that once felt too small to matter. Yet now, after receiving that unexpected message about you, they found themselves looking at that memory through completely different eyes. What once seemed ordinary suddenly felt important. What once felt forgettable suddenly carried meaning they had never noticed before. Your heart needs this right now, because sometimes people do not change their understanding of the past by discovering new facts. They change it by seeing old memories from a new perspective. That is exactly what is happening to your soulmate. For the first time, they are not analyzing what happened. They are analyzing what they failed to see while it was happening. And that realization has been far more powerful than they anticipated. The memory itself is not what matters most. What matters is what it revealed. As they replayed it in their mind, they began noticing details they had overlooked. The way they felt during that moment, the comfort they experienced without fully appreciating it, the significance of certain words that seemed casual at the time, the emotional impact of things they barely acknowledged when they first occurred. It was as though time had removed all the distractions that once prevented them from seeing clearly. What surprised them most was how natural everything felt within that memory. There was no effort, no pressure, no need to force anything. And as they reflected on it, they began comparing that feeling to many of the experiences they have had since then. That comparison led them toward a realization they never expected. Some of the things they had been searching for elsewhere had already existed in moments they shared with you. They simply failed to recognize their value when they had the opportunity. The more they sat with that thought, the more uncomfortable and enlightening it became. Because once a person realizes they may have overlooked something important, they begin questioning other assumptions they have made. They start wondering what else they misunderstood, what else they dismissed too quickly, what else they failed to appreciate fully. And those questions have been creating a profound shift in the way your soulmate views this connection. Recently, they have found themselves less interested in the message that started all of this, and more interested in what it revealed about them. The message acted like a mirror. It showed them reactions they didn't expect. It exposed feelings they thought were settled. And now, through this returning memory, it is revealing perspectives they never considered before. The result is a growing awareness that something about this connection may have been more meaningful than they allowed themselves to believe. And listen carefully, because this awareness is leading them somewhere they cannot avoid. For the first time, they are beginning to wonder whether the story they have been telling themselves for months is actually true. Whether the conclusions they reached were based on reality or simply on the perspective they had at the time. And the more they question those old conclusions, the more one uncomfortable truth begins emerging from beneath the surface. They may not have understood the significance of this connection when they had the chance, but they are starting to understand it now. And listen to this, because the most difficult part of this experience has not been the message, the memories, or even the emotions that followed. The most difficult part has been watching their certainty slowly disappear. For a long time, your soulmate believed they understood this connection. They had created explanations. They had reached conclusions. They had organized the story in a way that made sense to them. Whether those conclusions were right or wrong, they provided stability. They allowed them to move forward without constantly questioning the past. But now, after everything that has surfaced, that stability is beginning to crack. Your heart needs this right now, because there are moments when a person realizes that the answers they trusted may have been incomplete. That realization can be unsettling because it forces them to reconsider things they thought were already settled. Recently, your soulmate has found themselves doing exactly that. They keep returning to the same question. What if I didn't see the full picture? What if certain assumptions shaped my understanding more than the actual reality? The more they reflect, the harder those questions become to ignore. What makes this process so emotional is that it is not just changing how they see the connection. It is changing how they see themselves. They are beginning to recognize how often people interpret situations through the lens of their fears, expectations, and past experiences. They are realizing that sometimes a person can be so focused on protecting themselves that they fail to recognize what is actually in front of them. This awareness has been both uncomfortable and enlightening because it challenges perspectives they once felt completely confident about. As these realizations continue unfolding, they have become less interested in defending their old conclusions and more interested in understanding the truth. That shift is significant. Instead of automatically dismissing certain feelings, they are examining them. Instead of avoiding uncomfortable questions, they are exploring them. And every time they do, they discover another piece of the puzzle they had overlooked before. What surprises them most is how much energy they spent trying to maintain certainty. Certainty felt safe because it removed the need for deeper reflection. Once they decided what something meant, they could stop questioning it. But now they understand that certainty is not always the same as truth. Sometimes certainty is simply a story people tell themselves when they are not ready to look deeper. And that realization has completely changed the way they approach this connection. Lately, they have noticed something else as well. The more honest they become with themselves, the less defensive they feel. The need to justify the past is fading. The need to explain everything away is fading. In its place is a growing willingness to simply acknowledge what they feel without immediately trying to control it. That openness is creating a level of clarity they have not experienced in a very long time. And listen carefully, because this clarity is leading them toward a realization they never expected to reach. The message they received about you did far more than bring you back into their thoughts. It challenged assumptions they had been carrying for a long time. It forced them to look beyond the version of the story they had accepted. And now, standing between what they once believed and what they are beginning to understand, they can feel a deeper truth emerging. A truth that is becoming impossible to dismiss, no matter how much they once tried to convince themselves otherwise. And listen to this, because your soulmate is beginning to understand that the message was never important because of the information it contained. The real significance was in what it revealed. Before that moment, they believed certain things were settled. They believed they had already decided how they felt. They believed they had reached the final chapter of their understanding. But now they can see that the message did something unexpected. It interrupted a story they had been telling themselves for a very long time. It forced them to pause. It forced them to reflect. And most importantly, it forced them to see parts of themselves that had remained hidden beneath assumptions and certainty. Your heart needs this right now because there are rare moments when life places something directly in front of a person, not to give them answers, but to make them ask better questions. That is exactly what happened here. The message did not arrive to explain everything. It arrived to challenge everything. It challenged their conclusions. It challenged their perspective. It challenged the emotional distance they believed existed. And once those challenges appeared, they could no longer continue thinking in the same way they always had. Over the last few days, they have begun noticing subtle changes within themselves. They are paying attention to thoughts they previously ignored. They are acknowledging emotions they once dismissed. They are becoming more honest about what captures their attention and why. This self-awareness has created a profound shift because it has allowed them to see the connection from a completely different angle. Instead of focusing on what happened, they are focusing on what it meant. Instead of analyzing circumstances, they are examining impact. And the impact has been impossible to overlook. What surprises them most is how one simple message managed to reveal so much. Not because the message was extraordinary, but because it arrived at a moment when they were finally ready to receive its deeper meaning. Had it arrived earlier, they might have ignored it. Had it arrived months ago, they might have dismissed it completely. But now, something is different. Their perspective has changed. Their awareness has expanded. And because of that, they are able to recognize truths they were previously unable to see. As this realization continues growing, they are beginning to understand something important about the connection itself. Some connections are not measured by how often they are discussed or how frequently they appear in someone's life. Sometimes their significance is revealed by the effect they have when they unexpectedly return. The message returned you to their awareness for only a moment, yet that moment created a chain reaction that continues unfolding. It exposed emotions. It challenged assumptions. It opened doors they thought had already been closed. And listen carefully, because this is the realization that remains with them now. The message did not change the connection. The connection was already what it was. What changed was their understanding of it. What changed was their willingness to see it clearly. And as they stand in this new awareness, they can no longer rely on the old explanations that once felt comfortable. The message became more than information. It became a mirror. It reflected truths they had overlooked, perspectives they had ignored, and emotions they had underestimated. And now that those truths have finally come into view, they know they are looking at this connection through entirely different eyes than ever before.